This video is all about the Flash Player 10.2, which introduced something that was called stageVideo. I wanted to show you really shortly how you could actually work with stageVideo without getting rid of your old project, because then it's going to take some time until Flash Player 10.2 will be widely available, and you definitely don't want to lose users in the process. So to start things off, I just wanted to set up here a little small project where I just had here a simple video that should actually work also in Flash Player 10.1. If you run the application, you'll see it's just me talking. So it's just a short video of me teaching something about Flash. Now, there aren't any bells and whistles in this application, and at this point what I wanted to make sure is currently Flash Builder is really the only place where you could actually work on this new feature because it wasn't introduced yet into Flash Professional, but hopefully soon it will be, and this part of the video will be irrelevant. But currently at this date, while recording this video, it was still just came out. Flash Player 10.2 just came out. It wasn't yet in Flash Builder Pro. Alright, so the first step that we have to do is make sure that we have Flash Player 10.2 Plus. I already have that in debugger mode. And the next thing you want to take is you want to go to the project, right click on the project, go into its properties, and in the properties you just want to make sure that your ActionScript compiler isn't using the 4.5 Flex builder, which I'm using now, the Flex Hero, but that we're using the latest stable build, which is 4.5.18623, which you could download from the Flex open source URLs. You could find them also on our website, everythingfla.com, in the video section of this video. So I'm just going to switch into the Flex builder, into the latest SDK, and I'm going to click OK. That's all I really had to do, and that's fine. We're going to let it override and update it because now it's going to be updated to 10.2. So I'm just going to click OK for that. It's going to update our settings, and now we're ready to go. We're ready to take the next step with our application. The first thing that I want to note before we continue is that our path itself, our video that we're actually going to use for it to be able to leverage the features of stageVideo, it has to be an H.624 video. And my video was compressed in that way, so I have nothing to worry about and I'm ready to start working. Now, if you look at the way I structured it right now, I created a new video, and then I created the video and started connecting, creating the net connection, the net stream, adding the events, and starting our video to play immediately as our video. What I want to do instead of that is break the process into two different steps. So first I want to create the stream, because that's going to happen no matter what. So I'm going to change this, maybe I'm going to change this to create stream. And we're going to call create stream no matter what, because we want to create the stream. Now the video, I'm going to create the video anyways, because it's going to be my backup in case things don't work out. So I'm just going to put it right in my constructor. I'm just creating that video, moving it up. The next step of actually connecting the stream and adding the video to the stage is the two steps where I probably would want to separate and take out and maybe put them in a separate function for now. So let's call that function, we're going to create a new function, and I'm going to call it show regular video. And for now, let's just paste whatever we have here. And as you probably have guessed, if I'm going to create a regular video, we're also going to want to create another type of video, which is going to be our stage video. So let me just prepare that, and we're going to call it show stage video. Fantastic. So we got our two functions ready, and let's first start off with making sure that everything is still working. So I'm just gonna create the stream, and right after that call my show regular video, and just make sure that I'm still seeing everything as expected. And everything is still fine, which is fantastic. But what we really want to do is we want to only call the show regular video if we don't have our stage video. To do that, the easiest way is basically to ask our stage if it has stage videos. Now, the stage videos is a vector, which is more or less like an array, only a smarter type of array. And the stage videos basically will hold how many video containers we have. So we could just ask it its length. Length. And let's just trace this out. And just for a second here, I'm just going to comment out the video so we don't hear all that jitter while we're doing this. So we just want to see the... Oh, that's not really length, is that? Here we go. And if we run it one more time and just close it and go back into our Flash player, we'll see that we have 0 videos available, which is good. For now, let's continue down the line. So we're first asking, if we have 0, then we just want to start our regular just as before. So it looks like so far everything is more or less the same. All right. So if we don't, I'm just going to ask, if our length equals 0, that's basically what I'm saying here, then if our length equals 0, we're going to call our show regular video. If our length though is longer than that, then we're going to call our show stage video. All right, we could delete this line. All right, so we have here all the logic we need really to start things up. Right now we know that we have 0 available stage videos. The difference also, and we're going to see how actually while we implement it, we don't create new stage videos. They're just a list of them depending on our operating system, depending on the browser, depending on a few other features. And sometimes there will be, sometimes there won't be, depending also on the Flash version, right? So sometimes we'll have stage videos, sometimes we won't. Let's see how much we have here this time around. Because we're connecting the stream, but we're not actually running it. So even though we're hearing the sound, it's 0. So if it's 0... oh, it's exactly the opposite. If it's not 0, we want to call the stage video, right? So let's switch these two around. All right, this makes sense. All right, so because our stream is playing no matter what, we actually wanted to say only if we have more than 0, then we want to call our show stage video. If we don't, then we want to call our regular video. Fantastic. Now it's time for us to change a little bit our HTML template. And to change our HTML template, all we really want to do is we want to add into our template, and I'm just going to edit it right here just with let's just open it with a text editor. And all I really want to do is I want to add into our properties of our Swift itself in a few spots. So first of all, let's go to this classic HTML, and we're just going to add here. We're just going to copy this property, but we want to add a W mode, a window mode. And in our window mode, we want to set it to be direct, basically telling our operating system or whoever's listening that it could approach directly processor and work the magic behind the scenes. It's just going to make things run. It's going to enable our operating system actually to gain access to this feature, or Flash to be able to access those acceleration features that it might not. It really just depends on browser implementations and latest versions and so on and so forth. Which means you can't really make video overlays, right? So, but really the only usage for stage video is when you have a classic video player and you're not making anything fancy in it. It's just, you're just trying to play video. Now, only last part that we want to do is I want to set this also in our JavaScript. So I'm going to roll up here, find our Swift object variables, and I'm just going to add another params, window mode equals direct. Now, if I run my application one more time, we should be getting, and there you go. So now it's actually running it has 4, it's running our view only because we haven't done anything yet, so we can't actually see anything. And now it's time really to implement our show stage video. And in our show stage video, what we actually want to do, we want to grab one stage video, which we could get them just as we saw earlier through our stage.stage videos, and we could select the first one because we're only creating based on 1. So we know we already have one because this function was called. It wouldn't be called if there wasn't one. We want to attach our net stream. We want to get our net stream, and instead of sending it to our regular video, we're going to attach it to our stage. Now there's one thing that we have to do is actually define our viewport for our video before we could play it. And to do that, we're just going to basically tell that video player that we want its viewport to be a specific rectangle. And we're going to set that by creating a new rectangle and just basically saying that rectangle we want it to be in 0, 0. And for now, let's just do our stage width and stage height. We don't really care too much about how it actually is going to look like. This is because it's really just for illustration. And there you go. We set our rectangle, we set our attached stream, and we could play our video out. And we're already one step further. Now, we have a few things that we have to consider while working with this new feature. One is that even though right now we have 4 videos ready, sometimes that changes. And sometimes in devices, especially mobile phones or different types of platforms, the availability changes as your application is going. So we kind of have to figure out a way in our constructor to be able to update based on changes in functionality. And because we need to update based on changes in functionality, we have to add a little bit more thought into the process. So first of all, I'm going to add another event listener. Now this event listener, I'm not going to use a built-in class, even though I could, and mainly because, and we're going to get more deeply into that, because I don't want to create compiler errors in Flash, or errors in general in Flash Player 10.1. And to do that, I'm just going to put here the string directly. This event would actually be called, as we said, every time our stage of video availability changes. So if it started by 4, it might change to 0, it might go up to 8. It really just depends on a lot of different scenarios, such as full screen, not full screen, what's written in your HTML, what browser you're in, and that changes, and it's a variable. So what we want to do is we want to add a function that basically will be able to manage those changes. So I'm going to call onChange video. Because basically we're going to be changing our video each time this happens, or most chances are that we will. And I'm just going to create a new function, and I'm just going to set it as a regular event because we don't want to get any compiling errors or runtime errors in earlier versions of Flash. We already know that if it ever reaches this place, we already know that the stage videos exist because this event would never trigger if it didn't. So we could reuse this call that we just did, our call that basically just said that if we have a length, then we're going to do the stage video. If not, we're going to do the regular video. Now, really, the only thing that's left for us to really do is make sure that when we want to make sure that when we're putting one on, we're getting rid of the other one. All right, so let's see how we're going to do that. So let's start with let's start with the stage video one because it's actually easier. And in our stage video one, we already have our stage video, and really all we have left is to really just ask if our video has a parent. That means we added it to the stage, and if we added it to the stage, that means we already set it to NetStream as well. So one is we want to remove our child. We want to remove our video from this display, and the next thing is we want to take our vid and we want to attach a stream, but this time around we're going to send it a stream of null, making sure that we won't have 2 streams running at the same time. So we got rid of everything related to the video, and all the rest here is good and excellent. There's no issues with anything here. The next step is actually to make sure that when we show our video, that we'll only remove the stream from the stage video only if the stage video actually was defined. Now to do that, what we could do is, and by the way, if ever our stage video is being called, what does that mean? When our stage video is being called, that means our stream doesn't exist anymore. So our net stream was automatically disconnected, right? So we don't really have to worry too much about the scenario where the stage video has been removed because it doesn't exist anymore. But what we do have to worry about is if our video is not on the stage, we're going to add it, which we're already doing that. So actually, even though it's more complicated, it's not, because automatically our stage video information would be removed because it doesn't exist anymore if we got to our show regular video. Because the only time we get to our show video is in a scenario of no stage videos. Alright? Now I have one more thing that I want to do before we could really test this fully out. And let's just run it and make sure that everything is still working before we do that. And everything is still working perfect. There's no errors or anything. The last thing that really I want to do is, before we test this out on earlier versions of Flash and fix any issues if we encounter them, is we want to make sure that we're not actually calling directly. For example, stage videos doesn't exist in Flash Player 10. It only exists at Flash Player 10.2. So I'm going to get rid of this length. I'm just going to comment it out. And same here for here. It's going to generate an error if I call this directly. So what I'm going to have to do is add another, into our if statement, another stage that has own property, and I'm just going to check if it has that property at all, and if it does, then I'm going to check for the length. So I'm just going to check if it has stage videos. Like that, I'm not going to get a compiling error. So if it has one, then we could already approach it directly, and then all the rest seems like it should be working well. So the next step that I want to do is actually I want to downgrade our Flash Player version, and before I downgrade our Flash Player version, I want to go into our HTML and just create another HTML in our bin debug. I'm just gonna create another HTML. So I'm just going to go into the browser for a second, and let's just go into our Explorer. And in our Explorer, I'm just going to go into our HTML, not our template. I'm just going to go right into our bin debug here just for the sake of the sample. I'm going to copy our HTML file, paste it again, and I'm just going to, the reason why I'm doing this, I want to get rid of the automatic update of our Flash player. So I'm going to call it _ no update. And in our no update one, I'm really going to do a more simple version. Back into our Flex, what I'm going to do is, and let's just refresh. Whoops, where are we? And we have your no debug, and open in text editor. And really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of all the JavaScript, and we're just going to run it directly in the browser. So to do that, I'm just going to find our Swift object information, and I'm going just to delete everything because we don't really need it for this scenario. All right. And that's fine because we're just doing this for testing. And I'm just going to get rid of the no script. We're going to be using our no script version. And we could get rid of the no script right here. And we're going to save this out. And if I just open this file in the browser again, I'm just going to drop it into Firefox. All right, so we have our no update. Really, the next step after this is we want to actually delete our Flash player, get rid of Flash player version 10.2, and reinstall a version that's earlier than that. So I'm just going to quickly do that. And I'm going to uninstall Flash player, my browser. All right, so I just uninstalled Flash. And the next step I want to do is I actually want to install an earlier version of Flash. Let me just go to let's go to 10 debug version because we really want to be able to debug this. And let's go to the earliest feasible one, and let's say we go to 10R45, which actually I think introduced some features that are really needed here. All right, so we're installing Flash Player 1045, which was the first one that actually came with Flash Professional, if I recall correctly. We just installed Flash Player 10.10 version R5, and it's time for us to actually test our HTML and see if we don't do any updates to it, what errors do we get, and if we get any. And here you go. So our browser is working as expected. Our Flash played out, and we're actually running with the older version of Flash. We didn't get any errors, even though we're running Flash Debugger version 10. And done. And our mission is completed. So now our file is ready for the future. So if anyone has a futuristic version of Flash, which is the one that just came out, we'll be able to see video in a much cooler way, in a much better processor and less processor intensive way. You're more mobile friendly as well, and at the same time you're not losing users or trying to force users to upgrade until they're ready for it.